How you feeling back there? Terry asked after noticing me staring out the window. I mean, technically, I feel fine. I'm just in an extreme amount of stress is all. Oh, why's that? Terry asked, sounding completely serious. Oh, gee, well, let's see here. Maybe it's because I'm about to help a bunch of paranormal entities take down a murder organization that's run by some high order. Maybe it's because I only have a chainmail fucking vest to protect me, or maybe it's because all I have to fight them is a big fucking knife and a freaking pea shooter. I was getting progressively more agitated as I continued. As I took a few breaths, Abraham interjected. If I may, I would like to mention that the chainmail is in fact made of mithril, an extremely durable lightweight metal imbued with magic. It was incredibly difficult to get my hands on, so do be careful with it. Jeff joined in after the lecture. Besides, those weapons, do you remember what Terry said they were made out of? I nodded and answered him, a lot more relaxed. You said some kind of silver alloy or something? Exactly. Do you know what the other part of the alloy is? I shook my head. Have you ever heard of adamantine? Tried to hide my excitement, figuring I knew where he was going with it. Apparently I failed. I take it you have. It's not as strong as how Hollywood and video games represent it, but it's far stronger than titanium. Those bullets in the blade are made mostly of adamantine with trace amounts of silver mixed into it. Just enough to injure paranormal creatures, but not enough to compromise durability. That sounds expensive. It doesn't matter. You can pay us back later. As for the armor, you can return it to me as the battle ends. That's completely understandable. Magic metal is probably a little bit out of my price range anyway, especially a chain vest made out of it. We should probably discuss our actual plan before we get up to Tillamook. Jeff, how does the security look usually? Well, it's Sunday and 1 a.m., so they likely have a couple human-looking guys with dog heads. They aren't as strong as me, so we should be fine there. They're ridiculously fast, though, and have really good vision in the dark. I suggest we try to sneak around the back. Or Smudge can just make us look like we aren't there. We can ask him once we stop. I interjected. What about on the inside? Won't there be a lot of guys in there? Jeff chuckled. Why do you think we have the siren with us? With her voice, she can swoon just about any man she wants, paranormal or human. But that also depends on their willpower. It don't work too well on powerful entities. And what about the extremely powerful thing, huh? I doubt they're all gonna fall for her. Abraham joined in. Of course they won't fall for her. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a whole group, just her. I would say that Chad and I likely have the most brute strength out of anyone. Abraham was cut off as the SUV behind us was thrown across the I-5 to the wrong side of the freeway. Holy shit! Are they gonna be alright? I asked Jeff as he began pulling over. What are you doing? We aren't gonna fight that thing, are we? It just flipped an SUV across the freeway. Terry responded, a little too calmly in my opinion. Well, it just attacked the rest of our group. Of course we're gonna kill it. Kill it, I said fight. So why did he say kill? Unless... well, shit. This must be the first part of the mission. Type thing. But when I saw it, I could tell I remembered it from somewhere. It was big. Bigger than any other entity I had seen. No, that wasn't quite right. I know I had seen another entity that big. Where from, though? I shuffled through my memories trying to remember where I had seen it from before. Suddenly it came to me. Giant Before I could finish that thought, Abraham pulled me out of the car and was carrying me over his shoulder. Man, it's one thing having a friend carry over the shoulder, but having the headless horseman do it is all sorts of degrading. Given this particular circumstance, though, I was very grateful he pulled me out when he did, because we didn't even get 10 feet away before the SUV was crushed by a giant Wait. I thought that giant one was from my hallucination. Does that mean the manager guy has those powers? Am I going insane? Joseph, get your head in the game. This thing is a lot more tedious than it looks. We gotta lure it into the forest before anyone sees it, Terry said, progressively getting bigger with static surrounding the area. I pulled out the pistol, aimed for its face, and fired. The kick was harder than I expected, and the gun flew back and hit me in the face whilst I was holding it. But I knew it had hit from its cries of agony. Terry started going beast mode on the creature, using his tentacles as both whips and knives. Just when it seemed like Terry was winning, the worm bit down on his whip of tentacles, completely severing it. He let out a yell and began to grow bigger, in turn becoming lankier. He was practically an elongated skeleton at this point. That was when I noticed Chad. He was running over from the flipped SUV. Next thing I knew, he was lunging at the worm, punching it in the face. The worm looked at Chad, seemingly unfazed. I saw him mouth the words, "Oh shit," before it bit down on him, leaving only his hips down to become smaller worm food. I just stood there, mouth agape in shock and horror. "Terry, step back. I can handle this," Abraham said, slowly walking towards the worm. "Chad may have been a meathead, but at least he died doing what he loved, punching. However, you will not be able to take me down so easily." Just then the worm bit down on him as well, something shattering in the process. Is he gone too? I asked, already shaken from seeing Chad get bitten in half. Hysterical laughter started emanating from somewhere, and I noticed the worm still had its mouth around Abraham. He began to yell at the worm. It sounded like he was overflowing with joy. "Oh, I'm quite sorry. Is my shell too hard for you to crack?" The worm finally released itself from Abraham, and I noticed that the teeth I had thought had penetrated Abraham's armor were what had shattered. "Now you can play in the void where you belong." Shortly after, he unsheathed a beautiful sword and began slicing it over and over again until eventually it fell down with a bone-rattling thud. That was when I noticed Smudge. He looked like he was sleeping standing up. "Hey," I began, but was shortly hushed by Terry. Now back to normal, he whispered to me, "Be quiet, there's a car about to pass." After a car passed, I saw Smudge open his eyes.
"Such big illusions take quite a bit of concentration. We must move the corpse of this creature."
That was when Rachel walked over, looking like some average woman. "Oh, we don't need to move it at all. If you haven't forgotten, I'm an alchemist. Cleaning up a mess like this is no problem at all." She then proceeded to test a few bottled mixtures on the worm, seemingly trying to figure something out. Eventually, she came across one that apparently worked, because she put a few more drops of the mixture on it and the corpse began slowly melting away, increasing speed as it melted before the body was gone. It was gone in a matter of minutes, leaving only a giant puddle of what looked like water on the ground, with vapor coming off of it, along with the top half of Chad. Rachel made her way over to the puddle, and everyone else eventually made their way over. Smudge closed his eyes from time to time, presumably hiding us from any passerbys. Megami was the last to join us. She must have been doing her hair or something, because she came out about 10 minutes after the doctor and Jacob. "Well then," Megami said, sounding rather irritated. "How are we going to get there now, huh?" "How about we talk about why no one has said anything about Chad being ripped in half, I asked, trying to stare down Megami, failing horribly. Then I heard it. That damn surfer bro voice. "What was that about me being, ripped in half? Dude, this is my first death rodeo. There's a reason I like to stick with Rachel. The way she puts it is I'm prone to stupidity, and she's surprised I haven't choked on my own tongue yet." He did air quotes and all too. Rachel glared at Chad before speaking. "Megami is right, though. How are we supposed to get there without something to take us there?" Smudge responded, apparently done with the guard duty.
"There's a large vehicle approaching. It will not be long before we have transport."
Shortly after he said that, we all saw a semi driving up and pulling off to the emergency lane.
"Hop in, everyone. He will take us where we need to go."
He opened up the back of the loaded semi, and we all found somewhere to squeeze in. With nothing to do but talk, I decided to strike up conversation with Smudge. "Hey, so, how do you do that illusion stuff anyway, Smudge?" He remained silent. "Well, can someone else explain it by any chance?" The doctor chimed in with his hypothesis in his notorious southern accent. "Well, I assume it was something to do with controlling electricity. I mean, think about it. A brain transfers information through tiny electrical signals. If you control electricity, you can control the way someone else sees something. That's just my guess, though. Smudge just nodded in response. Well, I managed to shave off about 30 whole seconds of boredom with that. Ask questions about paranormal practicality, all right there. Maybe I'll go through them all in kind of a small side part if you guys want. But for now, I assume you guys are more interested in what went down after the ride.
We have arrived,
Smudge said as we came to a stop.
I will ensure that we are not yet seen by the guards.
We all exited the back of the semi and barely closed it before it took off. So, what do we do next? I asked in a hushed tone. As I finished, I noticed Jacob had made his way behind the guards through the shadows. I guess at night anything could be considered a shadow. He sliced one of the guards in half with one fell swoop of his arm, then sliced the other straight down the middle. A few seconds later, he was back where we were.
Well, that was rather disappointing,
Jacob said, sounding bored.
They're just the guards. They're mostly there to alert the stronger guys when there are intruders. If they wasted their strong guys for guarding, they wouldn't get as much money.
Well, how do we get in then? Is some badge or something? Just as I said that, Jeff held up his badge for entry. And if there are things on the other side of the door? He just turned to Smudge. Why does this feel too easy? Terry joined in. Well, it's probably because we haven't actually gotten in yet. Just wait and see. This is just the top of the bunker. Speaking of, Terry took an excessively long pause, causing everyone else to let out a groan. Jeff, how many stories are there exactly?
Well, I only have access to the first 6 floors down, but I know a couple guys who have access down to the 13th floor. So maybe that's where it stops. Who knows?
Everyone just turned to face him as if he had pissed all over our Cheerios.
What? Access is based on how strong you are. I'm only considered a level 6 threat by their standards. Not much I can really do about it.
Megami rolled her eyes as we headed in. Not much interesting happened on the first 4 floors. Practically everyone was obliterated with ease just at sheer power of the group. I didn't do anything but stand there and watch like an idiot. On floor 5, though, it seemed that Smudge's powers were beginning to push to its limit. Every so often, he would miss someone and get an awful migraine.
Smudge, you rest here and Chad will watch over you, okay?
Jeff gestured for Chad to stand guard. Bro, why do I need to do this? Why can't we have Rachel or Jacob look after him, huh? It seemed like he was going to suggest the doctor, too, but apparently decided against it. Abraham responded soon after. Look, boy, Jacob is far more useful to us than you due to him being able to transfer through the shadows. Rachel has knowledge we need as well as her alchemy. You help with nothing but brute strength, which I beat you in when I came out of my mother's womb. Chad backed off, seeming rather agitated. The 7 of us continued through floor 4, as we ran into a massive guy, like he was some kind of 10-foot-tall bodybuilder on steroids.
Jeff, I never thought I'd see you again. How long's it been now?
The massive man said.
Smalls? I'd say a couple of years now. I thought you died on a contract.
Only almost. The higher-ups have asked me to put an end to your shenanigans. Nice knowing.
Before he could finish his statement, his gaze turned to Megami. She looked as though she was singing, but I couldn't hear it. I turned to look at Smalls, but just as I did, I saw blood begin to pour from his eyes, mouth, nose, and ears. Like his brain had just melted or something. Had you told me a week ago that I would be completely unfazed by someone's brains completely melting out in front of me, I probably wouldn't have believed you. But now I'm witnessing it, and I'm unfazed, so there's that at least. Eventually we made it to the 6th floor with very few problems. This is where things begin to get a bit more interesting, though. I can only really go in depth into a couple of fights, but apparently there was some high-level threat entities on this floor. The first fight was me and Jeff. The others had their hands full, and when they were finished, they just wanted to watch. It was some sort of shapeshifter type entity. Jeff charged after the shapeshifter, attempting to snap its neck, but it just twisted itself back. I was just standing around, so I decided to join in with my dagger. I attempted to stab at it, but it shifted into the form of Jeff and narrowly dodged the blade. Next, the real Jeff swung an elbow into the back of the thing's neck, quite possibly snapping it again. Next, he shifted into the form of Rachel. Oh, come on, boys, you wouldn't hit a lady now, would you? I attempted to stab the thing again. This time it dodged with ease, right into Jeff's knife. I walked over to the thing and said, "The hammer of justice is unisex," and plunged the dagger into its chest.
Really? You want to go with that Batman meme for the final line?
Jeff said, very disappointed in me. Terry, on the other hand, had 2 thumbs up, his non-existent face staring into my soul. We continued on, heading to the next set of stairs down. How deep do you guys actually think this place is? I asked no one in particular. Terry responded, "Well, I got a level 15 access card from one of the guys I killed." He showed it to us and I noticed something. The card had 3 stars on the bottom of the card, filling up the remaining spaces, whereas Jeff had a card with 1 star and a fraction of another lining the bottom of his card. But his wasn't centered, starting on the left, but the fraction didn't even make it to the middle. Hey guys, I think the card might be for the final floor. Look at the stars and the difference between Jeff's and the level 15 access. Megami responded in a typical condescending tone. What? You think they would make it so simple a human could figure it out? You're dumber than I thought. This is actually quite funny. She burst into giggling hysteria before being smacked against the metal wall, slightly denting it. I readied my dagger again, not wanting to waste ammo. I couldn't see anything.
Well, would you look at that, Tucker? I guess we had the same idea as some paranormal shitheads.
I could hear the voice of someone. He sounded human, but it also sounded like it was coming through a radio. I couldn't see anyone. What sounded like a Texan responded, "Well, sir, we probably should have expected entities to get tired of this organization as much as the higher-ups." Jeff was smacked into the wall next, coughing up blood in the process. The first guy responded to who I assumed was Tucker.
Well, I didn't expect a human to be in here.
They dropped whatever cloaking devices they were using, and I saw what could only be described as 4 people decked out in full body armor. They were like Spartans from Halo or something. A more timid but still masculine voice seemed to join in their conversation.
Hey, sir, is that Subject 873?
He turned to the doctor.
Well, I'll be damned. Guess we could kill 2 birds with 1 stone here, but he's not our target. Only Subject 319.
Presumably, the CO responded.
What, you don't think I'm good enough for you, Jacob?
The armored guy. He added when he saw Jacob's head turn. This may be a bit confusing with the 2 Jacobs present, but for most of this interaction when I say Jacob, I will be referring to the CO and not the Skinwalker Jacob. If I'm not your mission, then why knock Jeff out cold like that? I know for a fact he isn't your mission. The US Special Forces wouldn't be sent on such a simple task. Jacob responded.
I just thought he looked fun to throw against the wall.
I began to hear the notorious static of Terry getting taller. The 4th guy that had yet to say anything up to this point joined in.
Whoa, was that guy Slenderman from those stories? That's sick. I wonder how long it would take us to beat him down.
He began approaching Terry, and before the CO could get out a full warning to the guy, Terry had all of his tentacles stuck straight through the poor sucker. He tore through the body armor like it was wet tissue paper. Terry began looking disturbed as he pulled his tentacles out. They were blistering horribly. Jacob spoke up again.
Well, I tried to warn him. Guess he had it too easy lately. I hate to see him go, especially to someone we'd agree to be neutral with. Guess you had a bit of karma, eh, kid?
He was cut off by Terry yelling at him.
Do not speak that name to me! I told all of you to take it off the files to begin with. I'm not the same as I was back then, and you know just as well as I do.
By now, the other 2 soldiers had sat down, apparently absorbing what had just happened to their friend. He calmed down a bit and continued. Besides, he got what he deserved. Maybe you should keep this team a little better informed, huh? I joined back into the conversation. If you don't mind me asking, what in the ever-living fuck is going on here? Some military guys burst into a paranormal organization and it just so happens to be the same day we do it.
I have a counter question. Why are you and these shitheads even here? Especially you,
Jacob said in a state of bewilderment. At this point, I was pretty sure I would die before the end of the night, so I answered in complete honesty. My wife died to this group. I needed some backup, and here we are. Now into my questions.
You, boy, don't have high enough clearance to know that. All I can say is the head of this organization is coming with us. But that's already more than you need to know. So what are we gonna do here, huh? Bloodbath? Or will you just let us through and take the leader with us?
Terry, now slightly smaller and looking exhausted, responded, "You three aren't going to be able to make it down there. You're too weak. You think you can put on some armor, give yourself some cybernetic enhancements, and you can take on anything? You're truly dumber than I thought if that's the case." "If I may," Abraham apparently decided to join in. "Terry, you should probably let Rachel take care of your silver injuries, and I can handle this." Terry nodded, and Abraham turned to Jacob. "Now, I believe the best course of action on your part would be for your little group to turn around and leave the way you came. You three alone would not be able to bring me down to the ground, and yet you believe you can take out what awaits you? You're all out of your league. They sent you on a suicide mission. You do realize that, don't you?" Jacob's demeanor began to waver. "Go ahead, hit me with one of the beams you're so proud of if you believe you can do anything to me. Or better yet, I will give you one free punch to see if you can manage to dent or crack my armor. Any more than one, and you die." Jacob lifted his right fist and prepared to punch. He struck with all of the strength he could muster. There was a cracking of bones, shattering of metal, and an arm being torn out of its socket seemingly all at once. There were bits of metal littering the floor. Not from Abraham, but from Jacob's suit. His left arm was completely torn off, and his right arm seemed to be broken. Yeah, the full arm, not just his hand. "Had you listened to me, you would still have an arm. Now I suggest you leave and tell your boss that the Headless Horseman did this to you." The CO was working with some syringes whilst Abraham talked. Eventually, he managed to ready one and stick it right above where his arm had been detached, quickly slowing the blood flow and eventually scabbing it over. The soldiers went with no further fuss. "Hey guys, do you think they ran into Chad and Smudge?" I asked, fearing the worst. I could handle Chad dying, but Smudge stood up for me back at Jeff's place. I didn't want to even think about him dying. "Smudge most likely just hid himself and Chad from their vision. I'm sure they're fine," Terry responded, now looking and sounding normal again. "Let's continue before anything happens." The doctor gave Jeff and Megami some sort of shot, and they both opened their eyes. Jeff let out a groan, whilst Megami just let out a pissed-off scream. Shortly after, we headed down the hall to continue our pursuit.